Warning. This video may contain spoilers. If you don't want any spoilers, do not continue watching. Silent Hill 2 is a survival horror game brought to you by Konami. It's a game about James Sunderland who gets a letter from his wife that has passed away 3 years earlier. In this letter, James' wife, Mary, says that she will be waiting for him in their special place which lies in Silent Hill. Even though James knows it's impossible for his wife to be still alive, he sets out to the small town to look for her. When James sets out at the outskirts of town to venture deeper, it becomes more and more clear that there is something very wrong with this town. The town is pretty much abandoned and there is always thick fog around. The people that are alive don't seem normal and the town is infested with monsters. While progressing the story, James encounters several persons, some of which are real and some are not. Angela is the first you'll encounter at the start of the game. She also was called to Silent Hill looking for her mother. She doesn't seem alright and looks confused, and she has suicidal tendencies at some point. Maria is a little bit complicated to explain. She wants from James what James wanted from Mary, and it's very specific. Even though she looks almost the same as Mary, she is not Mary. The fact that she dies multiple times signifies that she isn't real. Laura is a little girl who I think is very annoying. She tries to hinder James's progress several times by denying access to some keys and even locking James up in a room with a monster. She does, however, know Mary before she died. At that time she was 8 years old, and by the time James meets her, she is still 8 years old. This confused me a little. When I first met Eddie, he looks kind of cowardly, but after progressing the game he starts to change in a guy that looks like the kid that has been bullied in school too much and got his hands on a gun. Pyramid Head is a special case since he's a foe and not at the same time. He can be seen attacking the monsters that also attack James. But Pyramid Head also attacks James. James also encounters enemies, even though there are not a whole lot of different ones. The combat got a little stale for me after playing for several hours, since the melee combat is nothing more than attack and dodge, nothing fancy. The guns in the game are also nothing more than aim and fire, however to fire accurately you need to aim for some time before firing. This seems very barebones, but you get a little more freedom and fluid combat than the original game. Also noticeable is that as far as I know the game can be completed without firing a single bullet at an enemy. The first enemy you encounter, which I like to call walking barf bags, comes in different types. The first form dies pretty easy when struck enough, but when combating it you need to be careful at range as well at close quarters. With some range between James and the enemy, it tends to vomit some form of acid on you. This acid spewing comes in different forms. It can be a clear line, a sweep, or with the other type it vomits in an area when defeated, but it also has less health. Mannequins are enemies which doesn't have hands or a head. These enemies are a little bit more difficult since they are faster and more agile, but also tend to hide in small spaces, hide behind doors and obstacles to get the drop on you. Later in the game they are to be seen climbing on walls so they can jump on you from up high. These wall-walking mannequins do have less health. When arriving at the hospital you are confronted with bubblehead nurses. These take quite a few hits to take down and attack faster than the barf bags, so my advice is to use the shotgun on these things to end the fight quickly. Later in the game you are confronted with enemies that stick to ceilings to traverse terrain, that use screams to stun you and use their very long tongue to attack. Even though I battled the first few I encountered, these can be easily skipped just by running away. Later in the game, however, you are forced to battle one. There are also bugs in the game that die with a single hit. Nothing special about it. There are 5 boss encounters in the game. Maybe 6 if you count the first time you confront Pyramid Head as well, but this fight is on a timer. Just surviving for 3 minutes or so allows you to continue further, besides he can't be killed in this instance. In the original game it's the same with this fight, so conserving ammo and just avoiding combat was the best way to deal with this. In my playthrough, however, I did use firearms just to see if it would be different this time around. There is a boss in the hospital that looks like a meat sack in a cage which tries to attack James through the ceiling until it's forced to fight on the ground. Just staying at a distance and dodging makes this fight very easy. There is a very specific looking enemy hinting at something to fight in the labyrinth section. I went through my ammo really fast on this one, so I decided to finish it off with a melee weapon, and it was surprisingly easy. James can kite this boss faster than it can turn around. Fighting Eddie in a meat locker was the most challenging fight in the game in my opinion. He runs around a lot and uses a gun. At some point later on he obscures James' vision with some form of gas cloud. Near the end are two boss fights. First you have to fight two pyramid heads at the same time. This also can be fairly challenging since they can throw spears and don't stop moving towards the player, making reloading and firing in between their attacks quite difficult. The last boss looks like the boss James fought in the hospital, but also has a ranged attack while also being more aggressive in melee combat. It can stunlock the player with its strikes, which resulted in my second game over. The game doesn't solely revolve on combat. My personal opinion is that it's more about the atmosphere, story, and puzzles. The environment looks great and has a lot of detail. The game is roughly the same in shape and size as the original, but there are clear differences. Layouts of main story buildings are different, and for example the bowling alley from the original game is there, but it serves more like an Easter egg. There is even a reference to the original game when interacting with the pizza box at the bowling alley. Outside portions of the game has a lot of thick fog to obscure vision. This builds tension since there could be an enemy near you. When hinted by the white noise of the radio, you know there is something nearby, but exactly where or even what kind of enemy is unknown. The fog can also be disorienting, and I lost my way several times by walking too far or in the complete opposite direction of where I wanted to go. Checking the map often like I did in my playthrough is well advised. Buildings that need to be visited to progress the main story are often laid out as a 3-story building, sometimes with a basement or a roof. It's required to get keys, find objects, and solve puzzles to progress. In some instances you can break part of a wall to get in a room that has no other access point. Or you need to move an object to reach higher or hidden places. I have two gripes with the environment in this game. First, because the game looks really good, certain objects, breakable walls, and even doors that can be opened sometimes look like part of scenery. I have edited out multiple hours of the playthrough video because in some instances I walked multiple times through the entire building and every accessible room just to wind up at a breakable wall that looked like a part of a wall texture. The second thing I found annoying is a little bit of the same but with doors. Most inaccessible doors look inaccessible, but some doors that can be opened can look like doors that cannot. So if you're ever going to play this game yourself, you need to check every single door or get lost like me for half an hour just looking for that single door or breakable wall to continue the game. That's why I bashed into inaccessible doors over 390 times. I know this because the game lets you know in the statistics after you beat it. What a weird statistic to put in a game in my opinion. Also, the game lets you backtrack multiple times in the same area. For example, finding a key, object, code, file, or a combinable item sometimes means to walk all the way through the entire building just to pick up another object, complete a puzzle, or continue the story further. I don't think this is annoying since when certain things are done in the game the environment may change. New enemies may respawn and certain events may be triggered at places you've already been through. Of course, this is to add to the suspense of the game. The feeling that you don't know what might happen next. There are several puzzles in the game that most of the times require reading of files and finding items to combine at a certain place to complete the puzzle. What I count as puzzles in this game is like the jukebox at the start of the game, the coins puzzle in the apartment building, the puzzles in the director's office, the weight puzzle in the prison, and the cube in the labyrinth, to name a few. There are also combinable items in the game like in the hospital where I had to combine surgical tubing with a bent needle to fish some keys out of a drain. This is not a puzzle in my opinion, but more of a situation that requires some out-of-the-box thinking. Just like in the original game where you had to use a horseshoe and candle wax to open a trapdoor. The puzzles aren't easy but aren't hard either. I like to think of the difficulty like if you're able to read a book and understand what is written in it, you're more than able to solve these puzzles. It's not like some games nowadays in which puzzles consist of putting the rectangular object in the rectangular hole. I didn't get every puzzle right the first time, but that may be because that sometimes the text that is connected to the solution can sometimes feel cryptic in my opinion. Like in the coin puzzle in the apartment building, the last coin you choose to end the puzzle can be any one you choose and does not affect the outcome of the puzzle but only affects the ending of the game. I know this after looking up some information after beating the game. The gallows at the prison is also somewhat like that. The text that describes the crimes of individuals that represent the gallows were actually description of some of the characters James meets in the game. While I thought it were just some random crimes committed by people that were imprisoned way before any of the characters in the game could even be alive. Choosing a certain gallows to progress also impacts the ending of the game. The way the game ends is maybe the most complex, cryptic and unimaginable part of it. I ended the game with the in-water ending and saw that there were 8 possible endings. When looking up the criteria for the way different endings could be achieved, I was kind of stunned in disbelief. I know that the original game also had some complex mechanics deciding the ending, but this remake more than doubled down on this. To clarify, it's not like in other games that a single or couple in-game dialogue choices decides the outcome. In this game almost everything you do adds or subtracts to one or multiple ending values. And there are some weird ones in it. For example, examining Mary's letter in your inventory 3 times or more adds a point to 2 possible endings. I examined this letter once and didn't saw the need to look at it more than once, so I was a little confused something like this affects a game ending. After teaming up with Maria and walking in the wrong direction 8 times will subtract a point in 2 possible endings. Looking at Angela's knife multiple times, checking on Maria in the hospital 4 times over, reading a message in Neely's bar after the hospital or not. Interacting with all object in Heaven's Night, which are just environmental objects and posters, staying mortally wounded for over 100 seconds, attacking a certain enemy or not. The last coin in the coin puzzle, the choice at the gallows, which apple you put in front of a mirror. All this and more just for the first 3 endings. If you want the other 5 endings, you'll have to play the game in New Game Plus. Personally, I think this game is okay. I played the game with all settings on standard, but I didn't find the game very hard. When I was used to the combat of the game, enemy attack patterns became clear and the combat became something like hit the enemies 2 times then dodge then repeat. This even goes for some boss fights. I only died twice in my playthrough, which was more a stroke of bad luck than anything else. I was never short on bullets for my firearms, and near the end of the game I had like 70 healing items in my inventory. The story is very good with an unexpected twist near the end, and the cutscenes look great. The in-game graphics and sounds are nice, however sometimes and mostly while being outside I had weird frame drops. I really couldn't pinpoint what the cause was. Because of the fog you can't really see past 5 to 10 meters for example, so what's so heavy on the system? I've played heavier games that look better and have more going on screen without any frame drops. Some files and puzzles were a little too cryptic or didn't make any sense, but that is their intentional to keep some form of mystery. The game also plays really slow from start to finish, which might not be fun for every gamer, so you should take that in consideration before playing this. I can't rate this game with a number since it's a very special case of a game. If you like fast action-packed games with little to no story, this is not for you. If you like modern survival games or horror games in general, then still this game might not be for you. This game is more for people who played the original Silent Hill in the 90s on PlayStation but skipped the original Silent Hill 2 game. I played the original Silent Hill 2, which I liked very much, but this remake is also not for me. My personal opinion is that this is an unnecessary remake. It doesn't add a whole lot from the original and is still $70 on Steam, which doesn't make it very compelling to buy. I would have rather seen the release of the long-cancelled Silent Hills game than this. You will have to decide on your own after watching this review if it's worth buying or not. Because the game does a lot of things right, but not everyone is looking for a game like this. With that said, thank you for watching this video. Until next time.